Good evening, and welcome to the January 22nd School Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded by Easthampton Media. Easthampton Media, channels 191, 192, and 193, is looking for volunteers. If anyone is interested in helping to tape city government meetings, please contact Easthampton Media at 413-203-1360. Superintendent Leclerc.
Good evening. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? We'll do the moment of silence first, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I have a few announcements this evening. The next regular school committee meetings will be January 22nd, which is tonight, and February 12th. There is no school on Monday, January 28th, due to Teachers' Professional Development Day and the semester change. There is no school February 18th to the 22nd due to Washington's birthday and winter break. There is a half day of school on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, March 13th, 14th, and 15th, due to teacher professional development and parent-teacher conference days. And there is no school April 15th through 19th due to Patriots' Day and spring break. I'd also like to announce that the week of February 4th through the 8th is National School Counseling Week, and I'd like to recognize and thank all the school counselors in our district and throughout the many communities near us. And I would also like to invite you to the Easthampton Public Schools Community Forum at the high school, the EHS Community Forum, which will be held in the EHS Library on Tuesday, January 29th, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And there are flyers here. We will post this on Facebook tomorrow, and it will be sent out to high school families. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence this evening.
Do we have any gifts?
We do. We would like to please vote to accept with gratitude and appreciation the following gifts. From Dennis and Scott Grimaldi, a monetary donation to Maple School toward ensuring that children are able to participate in educational field trips. So thank you very much to Dennis and Scott.
So there's a motion to accept the gift?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor? With gratitude. All right. We are flying. It is now time for public speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak? No. All right. Our student representative is not here tonight, so we're going to move on to subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee.
Yes, so the Finance Subcommittee did meet last week and reviewed the second quarterly report for this fiscal year. I believe it's in everybody's packet. So, double check to make sure you guys have what I have before I start to speak on it.
I don't think they have that.
Oh.
Did you send that to
Was
Sue?
this
It was on
Dale's?
top. Oh, I don't know.
Did Dale send you? That's just minutes. Okay. Okay, well, I apologize, then you don't have the numbers in front of you, but I can still sort of go through the quarterly report and have Dale send that out belatedly, if you could do that, if you could ask her to send that out. She was supposed to submit it for this meeting. So, overall, we reviewed with her sort of, I don't know if people remember, I guess it would have been in October. She had submitted the first quarter's report. We had asked for a quarterly report being submitted to us to be able to look at how things were. That quarterly report was a lot of, probably about a dozen pages of Excel spreadsheets and numbers that was, we didn't find as the easiest way to read this information, and so we did sort of boil it down. I'll just sort of, so people can see, it's now just sort of submitted this way, that you'll get later this week. And so what it reviews is sort of the main top sort of line items of our budget. So again, our fiscal budget this year is $17.2 million, and sort of looks through the key line items of administration, instructional services, other services, which includes nursing, food service, athletics, and co-curriculum costs, transportation, operation and maintenance, fixed charges, and tuition to other districts. So she reviews in this document sort of the budget, which was scheduled for this year, the year to date, or costs that we already know have been encumbered, and then sort of what's left to spend, and then also split that out to be able to review what actual percentage we've already spent to this time versus what was budgeted. And so when you have that in front of you, it's will be pretty helpful. The year to date right now is 42.3% of our budget has been used. And overall, I think we're going to figure this out as we go through a couple cycles with this, is to see having that sort of percent used. As I think most of us understand, we spend at different points through the year. So some line items we're going to spend heavy at the beginning of the year, some items we're going to spend heavy later in the year. So we'll figure out how to use this percentage to sort of track whether or not we're on track for the year as we go forward. And so for the most part, though, overall, we're on budget and on track. There's 4 specific things that Dale brought our attention to, and I just wanted to bring up. And so I thought I would go through a couple of those. Again, you don't have it in front of you, but just to sort of clarify, under instructional services, one of the things that we knew when we were approving the budget last year is that at the time we were not able to include the lunchroom supervisor funding within the budget. And so we already knew going into this year, because it's a required position, that we were going to have to put that shortfall into our additional revenue, and so it's definitely a known shortfall of $60,000 from our budget that's going to be added into instructional services. Within transportation, there's a couple additional costs that are still, again, you don't really know what your transportation costs are entirely going to be until we're actually into the year. And depending on who comes into the district and where people are being transported out of the district. So we don't entirely know yet how it's all going to full out, because we still have 5 months of school left, so that can always change things. But currently we're looking at a potential transportation shortfall of $30,000 for foster students being brought into the district. And then an additional $15,000 for students being transported out to vocational transportation. So for a total of $45,000 of likely shortfall in terms of transportation costs. And then the fourth one was that we have additional vocational students that started in the district after we had already put the budget together. And we're required to do that, to support them that way. So we do know that we're going to have roughly another $70,000 in shortfall for additional vocational costs that were not originally estimated into the budget. This still falls within the sort of 2% margin of that we have expectations that we could still fluctuate and be able to pay for out of our additional revenues. So it's not of a concern yet. But I just wanted to be able to bring that attention, that we do starting to look at that as we're able to move forward with our quarterly reports. Is there any questions on that yet? And I'm sorry you don't have this information in front of you, but any questions in terms of that? No? Okay, so then the other piece, just to sort of notify everyone to know what's another thing that's coming up on the Finance Subcommittee docket, is that we are starting into the budget review process for FY 2020, and that will be 2020, right? 2019? Yeah, 20, okay.
2020.
She's got different numbers up here, sorry. So that starts obviously with Dr. LeClaire and her leadership team, and then we'll be starting to be engaging the finance subcommittee reviews. Those dates are still being worked out, but we'll probably be starting them early to mid-February. And then those numbers will eventually come to the committee looking at either around middle of March. So we'll be going through each of those line items in our subcommittee, and then when it's ready to bring it back to the entire school committee, we'll be doing that in March time. Okay?
Can I ask one clarifying question for
Please.
these minutes? So we're seeing we had the slight budget increase this year, but that actually suggesting ended up in a loss because of negotiated salaries with the union.
Correct.
And then we're anticipating something similar for next year. When it says losses, are we talking about just budgetary losses or losses of positions?
So, right, so what I was writing in terms of the minute notes
Yeah.
here is that, so last year, we negotiated in good faith with our Teachers Association a 2% increase, as well as the stepped tuition, salary increases. So those things were already approved and built in, and then the budget that was brought to us was limited to a 1.79% interest increase. So yes, last year we had a negative budget that we had to approve and move forward on. That did not cause any losses last year. We were able to move shift some money around, and so that didn't happen. As we go into this next budget season.
Well, we did go into the surplus.
Yes, we had to, like, particularly
But
like
no
the lunch.
loss of position.
Right, so the lunchroom supervisors were something that we had to move out of our budget, even though it was a known cost, and it got moved into our surplus, the additional revenues there. So that, but we were able to keep that so that nobody lost any positions last year.
Okay.
There were,
the-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but weren't there 2 retirements too last year that entered into the budget? And that
There's
was-
some other factors. I'm not getting into all those
Yeah.
details. So there were some other ways that we were able to shift things around to make it work. We also anticipate this year there's going to be some retirements that may help in some of that. But as we start to look out to this budget process system, we are looking at potentially being held to a 1.75% increase, which actually means a negative balance. Because we again have a 2% increase for our teacher union, which is 90% or more of our budget is based on staff position stipends and salaries. So that's going to be worked out and reviewed through Dr. LeClaire and her leadership team, and then obviously in conversation with the mayor, and to be able to look at that. We know that we are going to be having at least one more teacher position be added because of classroom size increase. Again, a lot of other school districts are seeing loss of students, and Easthampton is growing, which is a good thing, but we have to make sure that we actually budget for that. And so we know we're going to be hiring an additional teacher for a classroom for Whitebrook Middle School, as well as we're hoping to be able to include the known costs of lunchroom supervisors and things like that. We've also certainly had conversations here. The school committee had discussions that we really need to be starting to plan and fund the expansion around technology needs, as well as River Valley Counseling. Things like those are additional things that we are really looking to expand in our school district. And so that's a really concern that going into this budget, we're already hearing that there may be limitations put on us in that way. So that's going to be a good challenge forward for Dr. LeClaire and her leadership team to be reviewing that, and then as the finance subcommittee is able to review it as well to support as best we can.
And we're hearing that from the city side?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what's being put forward there. So now it's sort of how do those different things balance, like you mentioned, Lori, some of the retirements that we have going on may help, and some different things like that may help the juggling of numbers, and we won't know until we start to get into that.
And that'll be mid-February and March, that we'll have more
That we'll be starting to
information.
review into that, yeah.
Any other questions?
So I guess the last thing I would say is just, I think the new format that unfortunately, I'm sorry, you guys don't have in front of you, so you're not seeing, but we'll have it for next quarter. I think this is a good format for us to be able to see the numbers and be able to really sort of easily identify shortfalls or gains where things weren't costing as much, and so we'll be able to have that going forward as a good sort of quarterly numbers that'll come to the finance subcommittee. We'll review that as a team in advance of the next school committee meeting, and then I'll be presenting where we sort of stand on a quarterly basis based on the numbers provided by Dale. So.
But I agree, the format all around made it a lot easier. We had a quicker meeting.
Nice.
We felt like we really knew what was going on instead of looking at those pages and pages and pages of numbers.
Yeah.
So this made a lot of sense, and we really like it.
And hopefully it gives us more transparency about where we stand through the year. I think that's why we originally requested a quarterly report, and I think that the format now that we're going to be working on, especially as we go forward, will really help us have that transparency that we're looking at to be able to make sure that we are managing our money and meeting our budgetary expectations by this committee. So.
All right, do we have a policy review?
We just met right before this meeting, so we will have quite a few things coming to full committee at our next meeting. And I think the only other thing that people might have been waiting for news about, we did get the bullying policy approved with some new language from the AG's office, which we had submitted, I think, several months ago. And so the policy subcommittee will be meeting in a few weeks to review that, and then we'll bring it to the full committee.
Excellent. So Jonathan is out sick, and so we will not be having a collaborative update. Do we have an education? I know they met though, so I believe that he'll just give that next meeting, hopefully. Do we have an education policy update?
Did you want to talk about the education forum that we had for the foundation budget?
I would love to report on the successful forum that was held in Easthampton at Eastworks 2 weeks ago. And it was so phenomenal to see many of us sitting here tonight were there, as well as school committees from neighboring towns. Superintendent Leclerc was there, Superintendent from Northampton was there, but it was very important to have new state reps, including Dan Carey from Easthampton, Lindsay Sabadoza was there, Senator Joe Comerford from Northampton's district was there, and Aaron Vega, who was scheduled to speak and be a speaker there that evening, that day had been one of the co-sponsors of a new bill, the Promise Act, which is to see the foundation budget changed, which is desperately in need, 26 years old, and doesn't take into consideration the factors that plague our budgets now. So all working together, whether it be school committees or superintendents, the public, and the MTA was the sponsor of this forum. If we all work together, I really believe that this can be the year that we see the funding that is so necessary to come to the public schools, that we will be able to receive it. But we all have to be informed so we can be talking to state reps, not only the state reps that were there that evening, but state reps across the state. And that's the most positive way that we can all act together to see this changed.
If I can add, one of the things that we were talking about there was, what was it, roughly $775,000 additional money could be coming to school districts such as Easthampton. That looks at like 9 to 10% of a budget increase that we'd have within our school district, and not only would that make sure that we had no shortfalls in our next, fiscal planning, it would also allow us to get back some of those teaching positions that we had lost over the last few years. It'd bring back things like language learning and technology and things that are so critical for our students right now. That we're not able to fund because of the shortfall at the state level. So it's why it's so absolutely critical, and hopefully everybody can get involved and speak out for it. So.
Yes. Thank you, Mary.
Any other update? Okay. Wellness Committee update.
We'll be meeting in February.
Okay. Health and Safety?
We have not met, but I did want to announce that the The air quality testing at White Brick Middle School is going to be proceeding this week.
Oh, awesome.
And so that we'll be able to report back on that once we get test results on that. But yeah, we'll be able to follow through with our commitment to doing that this winter and with students in the school, so that we'll be able to see what kind of the air quality is with it all stirred up with all the students in use of the building. So that'll
Excellent.
give us a good baseline of where we're at.
Do you know what day this week?
Friday.
Friday?
During the
Awesome.
walkthrough on Friday.
Okay, awesome. I don't think we have anything under other. All right, moving on to our superintendent update.
Okay, so we have a few presentations for you tonight. Actually, I believe A and B. Are you doing those together, Sarah? It's stability for homeless students and tiered focus monitoring. Okay, so Sarah Mochak is here this evening, our special ed director, and she is going to be speaking to you about just some issues that come under the umbrella of her department that she wanted to provide information to all of you about. And so, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Dr. LeClaire, members of the school committee. So, in addition to being the director of special education, I hold a handful of other duties here in in our district. It's not uncommon for smaller districts for the director of special education, sometimes called director of pupil services or director of student services in other districts, to have these responsibilities as well. So I wanted to talk with you about two things tonight. One, the first one is around educational stability for our homeless students and students in foster care. In 1987, the federal government enacted the McKinney-Vento Act, which provides protections for homeless families, and in that are specific protections for homeless students. It's been reauthorized over the years, and it was recently reauthorized under ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. I'll give you an overview of how we provide educational stability for students who are homeless and for students who are in foster care, because there have been some changes recently. But certainly when a student becomes homeless, things that are affected or impacted can be school attendance, their ability to focus, their academic consistency, social connections, access to extracurricular activities, in addition to the stressors that may impact the family, access to medical and dental care, food insecurity, safety, because sometimes you end up in a place that's not always that safe. So what we're trying to do through McKinney-Vento and ESSA is provide educational stability, as I've said. So what that means is that students are entitled to remain in their school of origin when they become homeless. So if a student from Easthampton becomes homeless and is placed in a shelter, or the family doubles up with someone in Hatfield, we are responsible, working with Hatfield, to provide transportation for that child to get back to Easthampton for school. They are entitled to remain in their school of origin or district of origin until they are no longer homeless. So we don't see that lasting all of that long, usually. Sometimes one school year, maybe two, but it's not uncommon for families to remain in a homeless situation for years. And as a side note, the districts share the cost of that transportation, the school of origin and the district where the student and their family is residing. Some of the other protections allowed under these acts are they have equal access to all activities allowed to students. So we would be responsible for, if the child was on the basketball team and the bus brought them back from a game in Northampton at 7, we would be responsible, if the family wasn't able to bring that child back to their residence where they were residing. They also are automatically eligible for free lunch if you become homeless. And should you choose to enroll in the school where the family is now residing, so should the family be doubled up with friends or a family member in Hatfield, they are entitled to enroll in Hatfield schools if they choose to, or any other district. And that school, and it's likewise with Easthampton, if we have a family that is doubled up with a family member here in Easthampton, we are required to do an immediate enrollment. We are not required to ask for any paperwork other than emergency contact information. We certainly try to track down the paperwork, but in order to provide that stability for students, we just are required, and it's a good practice in my opinion, to immediately enroll students. A couple of things are different with students in foster care, and these are some new things, new pieces under ESSA, and that is students in foster care are also entitled to remain in their school of origin. They may do so until they are either reunited with their family or they finish all of the grades in the school that they are attending. So if a student becomes homeless in 4th grade, they can stay with us until they finish that 4th grade, because that's when that school ends. So then they would have to enroll in their school of residence at that point. So once they finish all of the grades in a particular school. Students who are in foster care may also enroll in their school of residence, and what happens is there's what's called a best interest determination meeting. So the DCF, Department of Children and Families folks, would contact me, would contact the district, the other district, the foster family may be involved, the family, a guardian ad litem, and we together, usually on the phone, decide if it's in the student's best interest to remain enrolled in their school of origin or to enroll in their school of residence. To me, it almost always makes sense to remain, the best in the best interest of the child would be to remain in their school of origin. That's been, in all the cases that I've been involved with, that's what we've decided, that they should remain in their school of origin. And it's for all of those things I talked about earlier. The social connections, extracurricular activities, and in a time when they're facing possibly some big stressors in their lives, it's important for them to have some stability and connection. They also are entitled to free meals and transportation. We report annually to the state. We report both students who are homeless and students who are in foster care. And the state uses that data to inform a workshop or an informational session that I go to every year in the fall. Just two more things I wanted to share with you. There were 24,000 homeless children in the state last year, which was a significant increase from the previous year. I didn't write down that figure, but I think it was like 15,000 the year before. And in the last year it was 24,000, and they weren't really sure why. It just, I think part of it was there was better and more accurate reporting, but they just unclear. Oh, there was a huge increase in families who were doubled up. There was a 9,000 more children were doubled up than had been the previous year. So they weren't sure why, but that's a pretty striking number for there to be 24,000 homeless students in the state.
I think a lot did come from Puerto Rico because...
Oh, true, right? Yep, that would make sense, absolutely, right. And those students would have been considered homeless because they were displaced. The other piece that has, we were just talking a little bit about the budget, is the one change is that when students are in foster care, if they enter foster care when they were a resident of Easthampton becomes solely responsible for the cost of transportation. We're certainly more than happy to have our students remain with us here in Easthampton and provide that stability for them, but it's been a shift and one that we're working to keep up with. So I just wanted to say that piece. Does anybody have any questions about the educational stability?
Do you have any sense of numbers of students in our district experiencing homelessness?
Every year, I think it's around, and it fluctuates,
Sure.
Of course, but I think last year it was around, I'd say 15 to 18 students. And this year, I think we're at about 10 currently. Just homeless, and then there's another probably handful, 6 to 12 students that would fall under the foster care category. And part of my responsibilities as homeless liaison and the foster care point of contact is I follow up with people every couple of months and try to support them and let them know of any resources that are available. We also work creatively to help parents get back to school, to Easthampton for events and that sort of thing. So, and it's really important work that we're doing, and I'm glad that we're able to do it, and continue to provide that consistency for our students. The other piece that I wanted to talk with you briefly about is this year, next year, so every 6 years, or more often now, but in the past, every 6 years, the state came out and the Department of Education and performed a compliance review on special education, civil rights, and ELL students, education of ELL students. It's been called lots of different things. Audit, it's been called CPR, which was Coordinated Program Review. It's now called Tiered Focused Monitoring. The one thing that I like is it used to be every 6 years it was this big undertaking, and now they've broken it up, so they've split what they monitor in half. So this year we'll be doing a self-assessment on mostly special education and student records, a little bit of civil rights, ELL students, and then a few other things. And then we self-assess, and then the department comes out next year in the 1920 school year and takes a look at our records, goes through files and that sort of thing. And then they put us, it used to be too that when you found areas that needed improvement, there was these lengthy corrective action plans that had to be written and reviewed periodically. And so that's sort of all gone by the wayside. And now they're going to be placing us on a tiered system. And most likely, in my estimation, because I think we are quite compliant, is it will be in like a self-directed improvement plan. There are always areas to improve, and it also takes into consideration our MCAS scores and a couple of other factors that will place us on in this tiered system on how we proceed. But I think I'm always excited by it, which maybe is a silly thing to be excited about, but I think there's always room to improve and grow and make sure that if we are compliant with the state regulations, then to me that leads us to be providing quality programming for our students. So I just wanted to let you know. I'll give, maybe at the end of the school year, I can come back and let you know how we did on the self-assessment. I have to submit May 1st. So my two coordinators, Nancy Weld and Dan Stern, are busy with that information, as is my new admin assistant, Anna Little. She's got all kinds of systems for monitoring everything they're asking us to monitor this year. So does anybody have any questions about that?
You might like it, but it still is a stressful time period, because I know our district just went through that, and the amount of paperwork that you're trying to make sure that you have ready.
Right.
So as not to waste their time, it's really stressful.
Right. It is. I'll be spending a lot of time in my office in the next several months, but it's part of the job. It's fine. Do you want me to introduce?
I would love for you to introduce River Valley Counseling.
So when I came to speak in October, I talked a little bit about our partnership with River Valley Counseling Center. This is our second year in partnership with them. I won't talk about it at all, because we have here tonight Alexa Mignano, who is the clinical supervisor, and she's going to talk with you about our partnership with River Valley.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You should have a handout that looks like this. So I am a child therapist and clinical supervisor with River Valley Counseling Center, and I'm also the program manager for our school-based therapy programs that we have in Hampshire County. One of the things that River Valley offers is outpatient therapy in schools. We do this in several districts. We're in Holyoke and Chicopee. We just started in Hatfield this year. We just signed on with Hadley, and we're at Hilltown Charter, and now we've been with Easthampton in our second year. It's going very well. We have 2 to 3 therapists in each school providing outpatient weekly therapy to students in the elementary, middle, and high schools. Currently, my numbers are around 160 to 170 students. We are doing all of the collateral work with the schools, so meeting with teachers and administrators and counselors. We go to IEP meetings. We work with the families. We do a lot of family sessions at the clinic when we need to. We all have a clinic in Easthampton, if you didn't know, on Mechanic Street. We have quite a few students that see us there after school as well, who, for whatever reason, the school-based services do not work for them. We can see them at the school. And we service many adults in the community as well there. So they are knocking at our door. We have lots of referrals. It's very good. And we're trying to provide more therapists and more services as we continue to grow. So, questions you have for me about our program?
I just want to say we started in Hatfield, and we are keeping you busy.
Yes.
The response it's been really nice. The response from kids receiving the services has been so positive.
Oh, good. Excellent.
It really has. So
Yeah.
we just keep adding more all
Yes.
the time.
Yeah. That's how we start. We start with one therapist in a school. We usually have, maybe 8 to 10 referrals initially, and then word of mouth starts to spread, and teachers and school administrators refer, and then parents start to hear about the service, and they start asking for the service as well. One of the things that I find with children, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to get therapy for their children after school, but it's close to impossible. Everyone's booked. It's hard to find somebody that takes your insurance. It's hard to get off time from work. It's hard to interrupt their activities. So by providing the service at the school, we're giving access to therapy across the board for kids and families. And it doesn't cost the school, which is fabulous for you all, I think. We bill insurance, and so it's a win-win, and also a lot of the problems that the kids are having show up in school. So we're right there, and we're able to connect with the school about those issues. So,
So students do need to have an insurance that accepts the service?
Right, so we take almost every insurance,
Okay.
and the 1 or 2 that we don't take is usually not on our end that the issue is happening. It's usually the insurance company. So we pretty much have managed to service all but a couple of referrals that have come in. So, yeah.
Can I ask kind of what the growth has been that you've noticed from year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, I think we ended with around 85 children and adolescents at the end of last year, and so now we're at 160, 170 just in January, and we have more referrals coming in. One of the things that we've needed from the school is space, and that's so hard, and we know that. And all the principals have been wonderful and have given us an office, and Sarah's really been helpful with that too. But we have one office in each school, and those offices are almost at capacity. So we are, in terms of how many sessions we can fit in a day in that office. So we're almost full. Yeah.
Well, the number of issues that kids are facing nowadays is just incredible. So this is just such a cool service. It really is. It's so necessary. I'm excited. Can you tell?
Yeah, it works. It really does work, the model. The students get the service they need. Yeah.
It really does.
I don't know how we managed without your organization before last year. Because I think that it is so valuable. I think it's so needed across the board. And even though a student, I'm anticipating, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the issues that you work with students on? Because I'm imagining some students have issues that maybe need to be addressed over a long period of time, and some students may just have temporary kind of struggles.
Right. I mean, as you know, anxiety is sort of the top presenting problem in kids nowadays. So we service quite a few students who are experiencing anxiety. We have many students that have trauma histories. And what I mentioned before, sometimes we pull that therapy out of school and into the clinic depending on the nature of the trauma and what has to happen in therapy. A lot of times our trauma clients are seen twice weekly, so we're able to do very practical coping skills work in school that doesn't address the trauma, and then the trauma work is done outside of school at the clinic. So we're able to have that approach to those problems. We work with a lot of students that have ADHD and associated behavioral or social difficulties. We work with a prescriber who works only with children and adolescents, and so we partner with her in our agency, and so we're able to sort of provide a nice balance of therapy and medication when that's needed. We work with students who have depression, with school refusal. School refusal is often showing up at the high school, and we're really partnering with them and getting our therapists involved with plans to help students re-enter school to increase attendance. So we're involved with that. I mean, really, we cover any problem that's occurring. Kids that are in foster care, working on attachment problems, kids that are having failing grades, self-harm issues, substance abuse issues, really anything. All of our therapists are licensed, so they're prepared for any problem that comes up. Yeah.
Along those lines,
Oh, it's okay.
along those lines, I'm curious, as you're progressing in terms of, meeting with more students and getting more involved into the school district, I'm curious if you'd be working with Sarah or anybody else to sort of potentially give back any kind of report to us that we could be looking at things that might be more of a systemic issue or systemic sort of concerns or challenges that we might be needing to look at as a school district. Is that something that might be in your guys' purview at all, or?
I mean, we could certainly provide some feedback on what diagnoses we're looking at, what categories we're looking at the most. I don't know that there's anything specific to Easthampton. I mean, I think the trends that I'm seeing are pretty much across the board in various districts. Kids with trauma histories is the biggest issue, and over a child that's having difficulty in school, there's probably a lot going on that we don't know, and then through the therapeutic process we find that out. But we can certainly put together some reports of some things that we're seeing. That's absolutely possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be appreciated, just
Yeah.
so we can have a better understanding of what our students' needs are.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you work in conjunction with the adjustment counselor? 'Cause
We
we
do.
have a new, right, so, and the adjustment counselor will do the referral, or can a teacher refer and go directly to you without going through guidance or the adjustment counselor?
The referrals do have to go through an administrator at the school, but the teachers do make the recommendations sometimes. So the adjustment counselors, the vice principals, the principals, they all have our referral forms that's filled out in collaboration with input from a teacher or from a parent. A parent has to sign off on the referral, or guardian has to sign off on that referral. It gets sent to us, I process and assign it to a therapist. So the referrals always have to go through a school administrator, so they are aware that this student is coming on board and getting services at the school. And then I provide periodic reports on who's on our caseload, so that the school is aware of what students we are servicing.
I just had a quick question. Yeah. Are the services through your center available for students who graduate?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's an ongoing.
Yes, so we can just move their therapy sessions into the counseling center right on
Oh.
Mechanic Street. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any more questions?
I think, sure.
I just wanted to say that we've, in the district, we've attempted to do this with other agencies a handful of times. And for a variety of reasons, it wasn't successful. So I was, I'm pleasantly surprised and overjoyed at the success that we've had with River Valley Counseling. And it's not something that, I think Alexia, you said, not unique to us here in Easthampton. We see this trend of kids having significant social emotional challenges. But this is one way that we're really able to
really support kids in addressing the challenges that they're having. So much so that your office here in Easthampton opened up just this summer, right, as a result of the partnership with us.
Yes. Yes.
So,
and we are booked with after school appointments from kiddos. Yeah.
so it's
Been nice.
It's been a really successful and worthwhile endeavor.
We're seeing a lot of the parents of the kids. So the parents are getting their own therapy at our counseling center, and then the child gets their own child-focused therapist. So it's been very nice. I did think of one issue I wanted to mention. We are seeing, in terms of trends, children who are spending hours and hours and hours on video games and YouTube as being a huge factor behind behavioral and social emotional issues that are happening in schools. So the kiddos that are presenting with some of the most severe issues, that is what part of the puzzle here. So I think it's complicated when you look at a child's mental health. There's a lot of things going on. But while I have a microphone, I would just like to say, if we can start educating parents and families about the real negative impact this has on brain development, I think it's really important. So, yeah. That's it.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And
We're gonna do the Hampshire.
Yep, we're gonna
Okay.
do,
So we're gonna have a tiny little pause here while I do a
Yep.
little explanation. The next section is the Hampshire Board of Trust update. And if, some people may not know, I am a teacher in Hatfield and receive my medical insurance through this board. So I've been contacting the Ethics Commission to decide whether or not I can weigh in on this, and at this point, it's a little cloudy. They just haven't made their final determination, and so we agreed that when we talk about this, until I get a final answer from them, I will go sit in the audience so that you guys can speak freely. So I'll see you in a few minutes.
so, I guess I can just share that, the Hampshire Trust has begun to make presentations in the community. I think they came to a city council meeting, and I know from conversations with the mayor that our teachers union has become involved in looking into kind of what's coming down the road from the Hampshire Trust. I think they're making some proposed changes that the union is trying to get educated and up to speed on. And so I think that we're just in the information gathering stage at this point, and I think as the next few weeks unfold, we'll be able to collect more information and have some real concrete figures to provide to our unions in the school side and on the city side. So that's the information that I have. I haven't had a presentation or any contact from the Hampshire Trust Fund myself, so I'm not in a position to give real firsthand knowledge of any of the proposed changes. I did see some of the information that they shared with the City Council at a previous presentation, and it looks like they haven't made changes in a few years. So unlike some other insurance providers that make adjustments every year in their rates and their premiums, I'm not sure the Hampshire Trust has done that. So I think this may be the first time in a few years that they've made a proposal to increase their rates. And so I think it's just a matter of getting more of the information before the union members can really make an appropriate assessment. So I don't know if you have any
If
other.
I can add one, so just to clarify in terms of the language, so rates have gone up. I think so it's not that the rates haven't been going up each year. I think what's at question here is a lot of the actual co-pays and costs outside of what's covered by insurance, which is looking to take a big jump, because those haven't changed so much over the past few years. So
Yeah.
rates have been
Thank you.
changing, but not the payments behind the actual insurance by participants. And some of the rates jumps are pretty large and pretty significant, so it's
So can I
concerning.
so we have no rate proposal for the coming fiscal year, and numbers that have been circulated are not official from the trust, and there are estimates based on municipalities' expectations. The GIC just came out with their plan increases, which we are not a part of, and is a much more considered unstable and unwieldy system, and they had no rate changes. And actually, the overall health insurance concerns at this point are mitigated. I'm hoping that in the next 10 days, we will have a formal rate design or plan design and rate schedule from the trust. There's an executive board of the trust committee tomorrow morning, and we'll see. There won't be a final vote, but I'm hoping by tomorrow's finance committee for the city council that we will have some of those numbers. Dr. Leclerc and I had a couple of minutes to meet in between our appointments today and talked about the other part of this concern brought forward by my office around stability of health insurance costs. And Dr. Leclerc and I just started the conversation I started with her around the volatility of health insurance costs. And even though this year might be different than what we expect, there's no guarantee going forward. Every major employee renegotiates their health insurance every year, so this is not something that we're going to deal with this year and then not have to do it for a couple of years. And we negotiate through the trust every year for those benefits. The city is one of 70 communities that's a part of the Hampshire Insurance Group Trust. And we are a member unit. And as a member unit, we give a lot of our individual bargaining rights as a community to the trust, and then they put us in with the 70 other communities to find the middle ground, best package of benefits and premiums for all of the different communities. And by large, we as a small community, 16,000, are facing, when going out for health insurance, a lot of the challenges that all cities are, that folks are getting older, that there are more medical options to take advantage of, therefore there's a lot more use for good things, for getting for keeping in good health or correcting or improving health conditions we never thought that we could in the past. When we go out, because of those experience ratings, that cost factor is minimized because we're one of 70 communities and the trust makes the executive decisions. We have an executive board. We're fortunate that our finance director of the city is on it, that advises and says what is absolutely accepted or not acceptable as far as our budgets. But it's a part of being in the trust. Hampshire Insurance Trust is extremely healthy right now. You have to have a minimum of 3 months of premium reserve. We have 8. And we are able, on occasion, to take that surplus and pay back into the plan to give a premium holiday for members of the trust, or work on the co-pays. And I don't know how that'll play out this year, or what that ability will be or will not be. There has been a lot of conversation around trusts and how they decide not to increase premiums or get a premium increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then decide to take and have no increase to their actual employees and use their surplus. Amherst recently was in the news and is about $2 million in the hole. They're negative on their health insurance plan because that trust kept using the surplus so the employees did not see any change. They are in a grave situation with their health insurance benefits at this point, and have in the past tried to come into the Hampshire Insurance Trust because our trust is so stable. And that is something that the executive board would committee. Because of that example in Amherst, as well as some other examples in smaller towns in the eastern part of the state, I did give notice after trying to come to a separate agreement with the unions to adopt sections 21 and 22 under 32B, which basically allows us to accept a plan design change from the trust or whoever our insurance provider is, and then negotiate with a public employee committee rather than every individual bargaining unit. I like this for two reasons. One, and I won't take up too much time. One, I think that there is a grave inequality and inequity in municipal compensation systems. So when you're having a increase of a certain benefit, it impacts those, one, at the lower end of the pay schedule much more than those at the top, and those at the bottom tend to have less ability to take advantage of professional development to then put themselves in a different plan. The second is that in Section 22, all municipal employees, whether they are representative by a collective bargaining unit or are pay plan employees or retirees, have a seat at the table to talk about how plan design changes and co-pays may affect them, and to negotiate under a manner prescribed by law of what the best benefit plan is for all municipal employees, because there are not separate dollars. And it preserves collective bargaining rights. So I'll wrap with this, and I found copies of the memo that I gave to City Council and to the union. So I have extra copies. I'll give one to Sue for submission, and then people can take one. And this will all be discussed more tomorrow night at the Finance Committee at 6 p.m. downstairs.
Thank you.
Superintendent, can I just add another perspective? Thank you, Mayor, for that. And I found it very helpful listening to you when I attended the City Council meeting last week. I think everyone should realize that it's not just an issue for the teachers, it's for all municipal unions. And 2122 does allow for each to have a representative at the table, but I did understand from the Hampshire Trust that if there isn't an agreement, then only one representative will be able to then bargain. So it will take away collective bargaining rights from the unions if it gets to that stage where the unions do not agree with what Hampshire Trust is proposing. So that is the main concern, not only of the teachers' unions, but there was a representative speaking from the firefighters and from the police. So we should all be aware of that. And tomorrow, that's when they're going to make their decision.
Tomorrow, there's a timeline that was passed out, and that one person that goes forwards in bargaining, that does not preempt the individual bargaining right of any collective bargaining unit within the member municipality. In fact, they can, a union at any point after the PEC is not working, the employee community can invoke their 150E rights and pursue individual bargaining as a unit around the health plan. The point is to try to get the financial relief that can be, or financial expectation on the city as well as the employees. And collective bargaining rights by unit in the beginning are collectively put together. So the burden of health insurance is shared equally according to how people are being paid. It does not at all subvert the individual bargaining unit's right to go forward under 150E, and that'll be talked about tomorrow. I've hired a consultant for the city to look specifically at this process and what it does for every municipal employee.
Okay, so more information tomorrow evening. Okay. All right, thank you. Cindy, we're all set. Thank you. And our final presentation this evening is Mr. Burke with the Program of Studies changes, for proposed changes for next year. And I think you have the packet in here. And I think Mr. Burke is making the presentation tonight, and then you'll vote on it at the next school committee meeting. So if you need to digest, I don't know how many changes are in here, but
That's interesting.
yeah.
Seems like
Welcome,
a lot
Mr.
more
Burke.
than there is, but I try to list it out for you. There is a table of contents that went along with the program of studies that I'll go through, which really spells out all the major changes throughout the document. Good evening, and sorry for, apologize for keeping you here longer this evening, but thank you. We'll begin with the table of contents. There are two main changes there. One of the things is that through the state, guidance departments are changing into school counseling departments, which fits more to what their actual job descriptions are. So we're making that change within our guidance department and changing it into a school counselors and school counseling center. So we're representing that in our program studies. And the individualized learning center was something that was actually taken out of our special ed program last year, and some reason why we missed that on the table of contents. The vision statement on page 4, which says Eagles for Excellence, actually connects to our past beliefs on learning, that as we move forward with our new NEAS process, no longer connects to our vision statement. So as we have our beliefs on learning below that with our mission statement, our core value beliefs, that no longer is relevant. So we're not getting rid of a vision statement. We have it included in the beliefs on learning. So the next would be page 8. Page numbers might be off from this now. I think we're actually, what's that?
10?
Yeah, it's page 10, for some reason why that is. So we have new social study frameworks from the state that are coming through, which is changing how we're doing social studies in the middle schools and in the high schools. And as our social studies department looked through on this, in the conversation with Kelly Brown, who actually worked with the state to help create these social studies frameworks, and our curriculum director, Ms. Julian Levin, we came to a determination that we're actually going to go back to where we were. I think this might have been 2 years ago now, and bringing back our 16 credits to social studies. The reason being is it's not a requirement, but the state is now recommending that students take 4 years of social studies, and this is the way the department wants to go. If you look at the amount of students that actually take that amount of credits, we probably have the majority of our students already taking those classes. So it's not even really going to increase the social studies class load, but this will be following state requirements, or not state requirements, but state guidelines. In order to do this and not impact our current students, the reason why it's broken down is we'll keep the 12 credits for the current classes, the current 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so it doesn't impact their requirements. But for the incoming 9th graders, we will hold that they have to do, for next year's incoming 9th graders, we'll have to do the 16 credits. And then throughout, there's also some wordsmithing in, just to clarify some corrections throughout the past. So going into page 14, see if we have this right here, our school to work coordinator.
No, that's page 17.
Page 17. You know, as you go through this, these changes, you make one change and they change throughout. I tried to get this as close as possible, but the school to work, when we moved into the new high school, that was the year we had we had budget cuts and we lost a lot of positions. That was the year we lost the year from, that was 2012, 2013. The next year, we lost our school to work coordinator. Since then, Ms. Cannon, who was the past school to work coordinator that became our librarian, did do a lot of work to help continue the program, but we don't have that position anymore. We have been keeping the program. We still have our work-based learning program, But we felt, as looking at what was in here, it's hard to put this in the program of studies if we can't offer this to our community in its fullest. Without having this position in the high school, we will continue to offer the work-based learning program. We've created a stipend work. I've been working with it. I think I have someone coming on board mid-year. We're actually working with our after-school program and the collaborative to help actually make this a better program. But we really are piecemealing this program together and make sure that we're supporting our students. This is important for our students to get this work and experience outside of the school. So we want to continue to have a work-based learning program, but we didn't want to put this and keep this in the program of studies if we weren't able to really fully commit to this. And as you look through a lot of this guidance information, it's changing from guidance to school counseling. So as you look through that, changing names, when we did this last year, Mr. Sampson was still here, so we're putting Ms. Metzger in here and making sure that she has the proper recognition. The dual enrollment program, which is under course descriptions on page 18. Once again, the changes there really are just wordsmithing more than anything else. The 100 level courses is a clarification. That is when you take a that would be a freshman first year college course, you take a 100 level course, and that's what that meaning is. This is so that there are no courses that are being offered by teachers in our school that are then being offered for online courses, and that's the purpose. But there was some confusion, so school counselors thought that was needed for clarification. Going down into English on page 20, communication skills and contemporary literature have not been offered in a very long time at Easthampton High School. We kept it in the program of studies just in case we might have had the numbers at one point in time, but looking at our past utilization of these courses, they're no longer needed. Something that if we need to, we can always bring them back. But and you can see that they're crossed out on page 22. And we go down into health. Sorry if I click one wrong thing, it flips me up in the document. There are changes made here just to connect this to our 21st century learning skills. So the health department, once again, did some wordsmithing for clarification here. The learning expectations were changed, and you see this in the health department. They went through and reviewed what they had done last year and did some clarifications. The rest of our departments did most of those changes last year in the program of studies. So if you notice, anything in red is a change. Anything that is crossed out is what was in the old program of studies that we're now removing. I know that this gets a little bit more confusing as you read through it. Any questions on any of those? The bottom of page 30 there for courses offered. This is a name change. Instead of what used to be Intro to Early Childhood Education, they're just changing it to Intro to Child Development, which is more reflective of what they felt the course was. All our PE courses are now 4 credits. A couple years ago, we stopped doing the quarter classes, except for the 9th grade wellness and PE. So there's really no need to have the 4 credit class in there anymore. And You'll also notice on the early childhood practicum, if you look on page 31, 32, next to the courses there is an E and then there's an H. The E stands that they are elective courses. The H means that they also are health courses too. So we've gone back and forth over the past years on these being elective or just elective or elective and health credits. And discussions with the department, we've gone back to students should be getting health credits, and it provides students more options as far as what they're taking for health classes. On 33, once again, it's wordsmithing. It was just changing some stuff that was there prior. Career cruising is not a requirement for graduation. It's something that students need to work through, but it's not an actual requirement. And the reason why they decided to take out those specific books that were in there is because the health teacher is utilizing a lot of different resources and didn't want to just specifically have those 2 books there. Top of page 35, which connects to Life 101, is once again wordsmithing. Instead of trained in, it's introduced to hands-on CPR. And that was something I think I talked to, this was probably 2 years ago, to school committee in regards to the fire department brought this in. We used to do CPR and first aid and used to be able to get certified through this course. That stopped a while back, and then they actually, through a grant, the fire department brought in and trained our PE and our health teachers in actually doing the hands-on only CPR. So, and we do that in the 9th grade classes so that all our students except for C-Tech students actually have some CPR training as they come through the high school. Let's see. See, we're moving on to page 36. AP Stats, Personal Finance are elective. That was just added by the math department for clarifications of what students could select. And then if we go down to Algebra 1 and the honors class, and that is on page 38. For the past couple of years, we haven't run an Algebra 1 honors class, and in the conversation with our curriculum director, one of the ways we want to actually move, and we haven't gone there fully yet, is to have heterogeneous classes in 9th grade. So we won't necessarily have as many honors classes offered. Students who are in 8th grade currently and taking the enriched Algebra 1 class at that point, those students move into the geometry class. So that option is open for our math students who are on an accelerated course to go into geometry in 9th grade. What our math department has found as they've run the algebra honors class in the past is that a lot of students aren't ready for that pace, that are currently not actually moving up into geometry. That it's been better to actually run it as a just general algebra class. And that is what they are proposing. And the other department that is doing this is, and you'll see, is our social studies department is doing that with their U.S. History 1 class, where they're not going to be offering an honors class, but just a heterogeneous class for U.S. history. Any questions in regards to that? Algebra 2, just some wordsmithing. And the extended algebra class also had some change in wordsmithing, just clarifying how the recommendations for that course occur. The next big change goes down into the science department, which is our AP chemistry class. That's on page 45. When we first started offering the AP Chemistry class, it was a year-long course. I believe it was also about 2 years ago that our AP teacher came and requested through his department to make it a 1 semester, which is a full year course, but a 1 semester course. Since then, the data on our AP stats test scores have not been stellar. And in reflection of that and looking at it, our science teachers have come back to us and requested to put that back to a full year course. And part of that is it's not necessarily because you can't teach the material, it's that the course has to be offered in semester 1 and then the break of time between when the class ends at the end of January to when the test is taken in May. We used to have a support structure in place when we had the grant, the 5-year grant, back when we were increasing our AP. I think that ended in 2014. And there were Saturday school sessions in which students actually trained and took the test, and it was in conjunction with other school districts. Without having that support, it's harder to get students involved. And you know, the teachers were offering Saturday and weekend and after school help, but it's not the same as continuing the course through. So there's definitely been a request to make that a full year course.
Will there be anything offered this year for the students who are taking it and lowering their GPA and having struggles and
So Mr. Sheehan is great as always continuing to offer those courses, and I can make sure that he communicates with the families and the students on what those are going to be. Our statistics class is in the same boat where it is in the first semester, and there's continually Saturday sessions, there are after school sessions, and now that Ms. Cheka is back this year, I'm sure she'll make sure that all those are communicated too. You know, one of the things that hopefully will happen in the future, and the College Board through AP is always talking about it but has not moved forward, is offering AP January tests for schools that are on block schedules. But that has not yet occurred through the College Board. It would be great because it would help relieve some of this.
anxiety.
Yes, yes. Well, and it does create anxiety if you're taking a course and you have this block of time before you take this test, and you've done all this work. As you know, as you don't have that knowledge going through your head, no matter how well you learned it, to keep that knowledge going and do as well on a test is difficult. So.
Well, and if you're swept up in other classes, you're not constantly keeping that information fresh. So there's this large chunk of lag time where, you know, you're going to forget some material. You're just going to lose it, no matter how hard you try.
So the next thing that we would be looking at is, and the reason why there are 2 AP classes now is because we offer it, you have to take one as Advanced Placed in Chemistry A, which happens first semester, and Advanced Placed in Chemistry B, which happens second semester. It's the same thing as the AP Calc courses offered. So when you look through it, that's why there's 2 courses with 2 different course numbers. Next one is looking at the robotics class on page 48. Once again, that is looking at not just having that as an elective, but also a technology course. Initially, when we opened up the new high school and we had the great fabrication lab, robotics was supposed to live within the technology department. When we had, for a couple years, we had budget cuts where we didn't even fulfill that position. Through the city and the school committee, we did get that position back, which is great. But in between all that, we ended up moving the robotics class up into the science department. Mr. Phelps has done a lot of work in regards to learning and how to teach robotics and understanding, and so we've kept it in the science department, but feel it is a technology credit, and students should have that option if they need to get that technology credit also.
Question on that is, how are we doing in terms of the actual technology pieces, or is that stuff that is ongoing costing that you guys are working with Ashley and such to be able to make sure that we're maintaining the actual components to be able to do that kind of a course?
So one of the things that we get help on in the technology through robotics is actually through our Perkins. We get about $20,000 to $30,000 of grant money per year through our Perkins grant, and that helps supply a lot of that material. And that is, when we built the high school, we got a lot of new technology. Like you said, upkeeping that over time, you know, we're definitely about, what, 5 years, 6 years out since that has occurred. Keeping that technology up is something we've had to do. Perkins has been great as far as allowing that to happen. These courses are part of that Perkins pathway.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
So as long as we continue on with that grant and that pathway, yes. Now we're on the Social Studies Department, which begins on page 50. Once again, this goes on to the changes in credit that I talked about at the beginning. The one other difference is civics is now something that is being offered in 8th grade, which used to be a World History 1 class. With that change, we only offered World History 2 at the high school level. Now, with the 3 required classes, there'll be US 1, US 2, and then a general world history class, which you can see if you scroll down to the next page. They are calling, oh, actually didn't make that change. I have to make that change there. I don't know if it was made there. You'll have to make that change in 2 places. If you scroll down to page 54, turn to page 54, they're calling it, sorry, that is not the world history one. Here it is, page 56, the rise of the nation state to the present. So what they're trying to do is within a year-long course or within one course, looking at world history 1 and 2 and taking the highlights of it. And they made the changes for that. Coming back up to the US 1 class, once again, the change in that is they wanted to go to just the academic US history, just in the US History 1 class. US History 2 will still have an academic or an honors, same thing with the world. But with that 9th grade class, with students coming in, they're just going to offer a heterogeneous 9th grade class. Any questions on the changes in social studies? I know that's probably the biggest change that's occurring in the program of studies due to the frameworks. And that was one of the questions I had. I wanted to send that. I'm not sure if I attached the social studies framework when I forwarded that document out, but that's something I could send out and make sure you all have. Did I send that with the initial document? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll make sure you all have it so you can reference the new frameworks. In the special education programs, in the Applied Learning Center, we crossed out a full-day program. There are students that are in their full day, but there are also students that aren't, so we left it general, just so we weren't defining it as a full-day program. There are still students that can be there for a full day. And then going down to technology department. Information technology last year was, the name was changed to computer applications, but in the course offered sheet that was missed. So we caught that change this year. And just to clarify, so that it's in the same place, robotics was put in here also as a technology credit. So as students go down and actually look in technology, robotics courses offered here in the program of studies, not just in the science. The course descriptions for accounting, which is on 1 and 2, which is on page 64, really just changes from the teacher to clarify really what she is doing within that course, and making sure it's clear for students as they come in. When we hired her 2 years ago, she's really been doing a great job trying to make sure that curriculum is set and is meeting 21st century learning expectations. So she's been clarifying that. She made changes last year. She made changes this year. Same thing with the introduction to business class, which is on page 65. And the introduction to international business, which is on the following page. On page 67, web page design and development 2, we initially put that for offered on odd number school years. As our teacher was developing these programs, it didn't make sense to have a web page design offered. So at this point, she's been there for 2 years, and we think we can run this course every year, or at least offer it to see what our tallies are and see if we get enough student enrollment as another class. Another credit change, Graphic Arts 1, definitely is an art course. That, once again, that was a conversation that occurred between the technology department and the art department, and agreed that that could occur. And Ms. Clavu is also a certified art teacher, so. And that worked for multimedia, too. Publications. Publications was a big change last year. Publications was utilized in many different ways in our schools. One, it was helped to generate our yearbook. We made a big change at the beginning of this year, where our yearbook is actually a stipend position, which it was before, but it is become student-run as a club. It was really run out of the publication course in the past. I think this is really beneficial. This gives students voice, students who really don't necessarily have to take a publications class to now get involved. And Ms. Davis has done a great job getting students involved, and hopefully we have a turnaround in our yearbook for that, and more student buy-in too, because it's more student generated than generated through a class. Publications was also utilized to go with band and chorus on our AB days. And we made this change last year because what happened, our students in band and chorus were getting locked into publications, and there wasn't much being offered. And we spent a lot of time last year trying to figure out how can we provide more opportunities for students who want to be in band and chorus, and not just continue to offer them the same classes over and over again. And that was when we came up with speech and drama last year. We did not get enough students enrolled in that course last year to run it. Ms. Davis is going to try to run that again this year. Another course that we've matched up with A and B days is Stagecraft, which has actually worked really well. And we ran that for both first semester and second semester, and that really helped support the drama club and creating the actual stages that are there for the performances. So that's worked well, and we reflect that change here too in the program of studies. So we switched this over to odd years for publication 1. We want to still keep it in the program of studies as a course that could possibly be offered, but not as an option for next year. So on page 71 is where robotics was added again. Design technology course has removed metalwork and welding. It is something that our teacher wants to bring in. We've had multiple conversations with the fire department and the building building inspector. Yes, that's who, the building inspector, to see if we can actually get welding into that shop. And there are a few things that need to be done before we can do it safely and make sure we meet all the codes. we'll continue to work on that, but until we can set up a welding area that meets their regulations, we can't actually offer that, so. But it is something there is equipment from the building that moved over that we can still utilize. And actually, Ms. Davis is certified in welding, so it is something we could bring in. Looking at page 73, once again, because this is in visual and performing arts, because we're offering graphic arts and multimedia as art courses, we're putting them under that in the program of studies, so it's clear for students as they're looking through. So if they need a art credit, those courses are offered. On page 79, references Stagecraft for band, chorus, and just being offered. And that is what I referred to when I was talking about publications. And I believe the last change I have in here is on page 82 in the World Language Department. Excel was left in there. We haven't offered Excel for the past 2 years. That was missed in the program of studies in the past, so we removed that.
What was Excel?
Excel was our behavior program that was run. That actually, we haven't offered that probably in 4 or 5 years now.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's.
I have another question if
Yes,
you're
go
done.
ahead. I think that
And
was
it's
all the
the sa-
changes, so.
It's the same question I asked a year ago about level 5 for Spanish and French. But now I have an additional question this year, because last year when I asked, you said there were no students in level 5, and I asked, well, why is it still in the book? And now I notice that the minimum grade requirement went from a 70 to a 90. It's not highlighted here, but it's crossed out. And that, to me, discourages students from even considering continuing with their language studies when we should be encouraging them.
Do you see that in there?
It's on page 84.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that was an error from before. It should still be 70. 70 is what it was prior. That wasn't the change that I referenced or looked at, and nothing that the World Language Department had a conversation with me on.
Okay.
So I'm sorry that I missed that, but I will make sure I'll actually.
Did you see any students wanting to sign up for level 5? Do you know, or?
I would have to go back and look at my tally sheets for that. One of the things that I have noticed in our world languages is that we do have declining numbers in starting in level 3, 4, and 5. And it's actually been one of the ongoing debates, and it's still an ongoing debate as far as the requirements of the 2 languages. I'm a firm believer in foreign language. I actually think students should start foreign languages earlier. But what we have in our district right now is our foreign language occurs in our high school. And I think having a Spanish 1, Spanish 2, a French 1, French 2 is really important for our students. The debate that is coming up through our school counseling department, through our world language department, is also there are students that are struggling. They're struggling in the level 1s, they're struggling in the level 2s, and what we do for that. I don't think taking away the language requirement is the way to go, but maybe for students who struggle in the language 1, offering an alternative course in the level 2, which maybe is more of a cultural course, might be an option, and that's something that we've talked about. That was not able to be brought to the table at this point. Maybe it is something we can come back to and make changes before the end of the year. If our world language department and our school counseling department and administration can determine what to bring forward, and maybe that's something that we can put in as an addendum later.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with that. As a language teacher, world languages is not for every student. And I also want to try, I said it last year, to extend our language program and have it start earlier, not only in the middle schools, but I'd really like to see a bilingual program started in Easthampton in the next couple of years. And that's something I'm going to bring to the table.
Yeah, that would be great.
So along those same lines, so there's no AP courses within language, correct? From
That's
what we
fine.
offer.
There's-
We do offer that,
No.
but we don't offer it within Eastern.
So AP goes along with a fifth level. So not only do we not have a fifth level, we don't have AP either.
Right, but
Yeah.
so I'm saying we don't here, but it could be offered if we had a better program. Is what I'm
Yes,
hearing you
if it
say.
started earlier.
And then I'm curious, just outside of this too, again, sort of a broader picture. So looking at this, we've got, for AP classes, we've got calculus, statistics, chemistry, US history, and English lit. So it looks like there's five, maybe two English
There's-
lit levels.
Yeah,
So
there's one's English lit and one's English comprehension. So
Right, so
yeah, there's
so
11th grade
six
and then 12th
different
grade.
offerings.
Yes.
I'm curious, what do you see in terms of actual participation in that? Are those classes full? Do we need to offer more AP, or do we not utilizing those courses enough within our student body? I'm just curious to get a little better sense of our AP perspective within high school.
So our 11th and 12th grade AP classes probably get more than 50% of our student body in them on a regular basis. They're definitely in high demand at the point where we are a small school. We end up running AP classes and not necessarily honors classes at those grade levels. Students either fall and take the academic levels or they go up to the AP levels. So we definitely have a large amount, high percentage of our students taking the AP English classes. I think when you get into the sciences, when you start looking at AP Calc and AP Chemistry, which are definitely high demand and, as was said before, can create anxiety with students, those classes usually fall in average of 15 students per class. Our stats class started out small, but we've increased the enrollment once we had Ms. Cheka started running it. We've had enrollments up to 25 to 30 students wanting to take that class for the statistics class, which is great. So our numbers definitely fluctuate.
So I just have a question. I know that, like with the social studies, the framework has changed within the state, but these changes are great. Well, my kid's a senior. And I think it's wonderful for students like coming in and what prompted a lot of these changes? Did you say the NIASC review?
No, this is something that the state's been looking at. The state has, since I started teaching a long time ago, the state has always been looking at social studies requirement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it initially started as an MCAS tested subject. That only lasted for a little while. They stopped testing in social studies. They've always wanted to go back to necessarily when they started talking about, the MCAS 2.0, they wanted to go back to testing social studies. They still want to go in that direction. Not quite sure if they'll get there or not, but part of, as we go through and we change our curriculum, the state looks at the curriculum, they've looked at the science curriculum just recently, they made changes to that. They were looking at the social studies curriculums and made changes to that. A lot of this has to go into a huge change if you read through it. When I send it to you, there's a large civic requirement in the social studies now, which is great.
Well, I was looking at some of the other classes that have changed, like the graphics is now art and technology, or if that's
Yep.
what it was. That's obviously new. So, what prompted those changes? I'm
So
just curious.
those are changes that we decided to do as a school, and those changes are just to offer more flexibility for our students. I know that when I was a college student, I looked for classes that, and I took, and in college, if you take a class and it fulfills 3 different requirements, those actually count for those requirements. In high school, you can't take an
Right.
art tech and have it all. You have to take the class that works, but it offers more options for a student. And with our block schedule and some of our constraints, the more options we have, I think the better we can schedule and the more we can keep down class sizes.
Oh, I completely agree. I was just curious. Like,
So it
there's a
kinda-
lot of changes in there, so I was just curious.
Yeah, so I
If it
think
was
this is
just taking a
beneficial
deeper
to our
look.
students and flexibility.
Yep. One more question, and I don't know if necessarily direct this question towards, but so you mentioned NEASC. I know that the teachers have now approved all of those
Yes.
pieces. I'm wondering if there's gonna be a time where that's gonna be put on the agenda for it to be reported back to us, for BS to be able to review that.
So one of the things, as I've gone through this process, I've learned a lot of things in the NEAS process. Those documents are actually supposed to be kept private up until actually the NEAS actually comes back with their report. So NEAS does not want us sharing out those reports publicly until they come do their visit and share back their report.
And is that even, in terms of privately, that doesn't include school committee, or we have as well, or what is our process in that stage?
I think the fear is that they're gonna come on site and do a visit, and they may do interviews, so they don't wanna have you prejudge anything based on what's in the report. So I think they wanna hear honest perceptions of what you see, as opposed to information that the teachers have, that they've put in the reports. So I think they want to do an unbiased look with all of you.
Okay.
Can I just jump back to a positive note about world languages? DESE, if they haven't hired someone yet, they are in the process of hiring someone to look at the standards for world language that has not been examined since 1998. So that will be coming forward, and maybe that will help us to build our program.
Great. Yeah, I definitely think if we can work and get a alternative course that focuses on world cultures, it would be great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Buck. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. I'm all set.
Yeah. So on to matters for action.
Lawrence and Pickle?
I move to approve the school payroll dated January 17, 2019 in the amount of $507,759.84.
You go. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I move to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated January 17, 2019 in the amount of $391,923.67.
Second
that.
Jonathan isn't here jumping in, so.
Okay, who seconded? Okay.
Too polite.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I move to accept the minutes from our regular session school committee meeting on January 10th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Do we need to approve the executive session minutes, or is that still under consideration? That, okay.
Only if all those things have been concluded and
They've all been have they been concluded? Do we, yes?
that's what I'm checking, have all the executive session pieces
I can't
been.
remember what was on there, I think everything's been signed, yeah.
I don't think there were any questions.
So I would move to accept the minutes from the executive session on January 10th. of 2019.
Second.
Okay, any
January
discussion?
8th.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Calendar, do we need, I imagine we need to discuss this, or?
Like the latest one.
Yes, the one that was sitting at their desk, that's highlighted in purple.
Okay, so this says draft number 3.
You wanna look at draft number 3. You made another change.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have draft number 3?
You do.
No,
is right
we
here.
do. It's highlighted in purple.
Thrown.
So we had to change the, in January, we had to change the 24th to the 27th. You had pointed that out as just an error, that, because the semester change was on the 27th. So that was one change, and then we added
Professional days.
4 half-days for instructional professional development. with a focus on doing some vertical alignment work in the district. As an administrative team, from a lot of discussion with teachers, it's very needed in this district, and it's something that went away over the years. So we counted up the hours of time on learning, and we can afford to have these 4 half-days. So we want to do that. I think there were 4 half-days in the calendar this year for NEASC work, so it was only at that level. But in taking a further look, we'd like to expand it and have that focus on more vertical work throughout the district, which means having an opportunity for elementary teachers to sit down with high school teachers and everyone in between to talk about content and what it looks like across the district.
Excellent.
So that's the highlighted days there. Those will be for paraprofessionals as well.
Great. So do we have a proposal to accept this?
Draft 3.
I would make a motion to accept the draft 3 of the school calendar for 2019-2020.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Now we have an out-of-state field trip.
We have an out-of-state field trip request from Center Pepin for Friday, May 17th of this year. The destination is the Connecticut Science Center. The cost per student will be $11, with the source of funding being student activities and families. And the purpose of the trip is to see the permanent exhibits at the Science Center that address all MA science standards for grade 1, physical science, earth and space sciences, life sciences, and technology and engineering. So I would make a motion to accept this out-of-state field trip request.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Can I go back to the calendar thing real quickly? I'm sorry.
No.
Totally out of line, I apologize. But one of the things that we're hoping to talk about when we do get to our working group meeting is looking at the use of blizzard bags or what have you, depending on what language you're using. So hopefully that's something we're still going to be in discussion for possibly for next year. I also don't know where the teachers union might be standing on that too, and at one point they were going to be raising that as an opportunity for us to look at as a school district. So maybe we can continue to look at that even as we accept this calendar and move forward with it. It might be something that might alleviate that concern around school snow days into the next calendar year.
So far this year we've been okay.
So far this year we've been fine, of course, but
It's not changing yet.
but something for us to look at for the future.
Right, but that doesn't affect the calendar right now.
No, it's just in association with the calendar, but.
School choice.
So lastly, we have a request from Principal Belize that we open 3 school choice slots for the 7th grade during the 2018-2019 school year. I don't know if you know anything about the reason for opening
I
those.
don't. I don't.
This is for current, this year?
2018, 2019.
Do we have the room in the classes?
I'm assuming yes, if she asked for it, then yes. There must be the room, and there probably is a list of applicants.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Do we know, though, if this is because students have moved into the district, or people are just now trying to get into it through choice? I'm just.
Well, if they moved into the district, we wouldn't need a school choice
They
slot.
moved out of district.
Oh, so they moved out of the district, so they're
If they
trying to
moved
choice.
out,
They're
that
trying to
might
stay
be,
here.
yeah.
They're trying to stay here
And they
through
wanna
the end of the
stay.
school year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
just want to get understanding which direction this was going and why it was happening this late in the year,
Yeah.
so. Okay, thank you.
I would make a motion to
a good-
accept this request to open 3 school choice slots for 7th grade for this year.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Shannon
Who's
seconded.
seconding?
Shannon seconded.
Okay,
Excited to
all
do
right,
that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Have a great night.
We're off on our timing tonight, you guys.
So